Hello and welcome everyone to the Friday, September 5th, 2025 episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the podcast, we're going to spend a whole lot of time talking about Joni Ernst's big announcement and the fallout of which there has already been much. Hey everyone, I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. With me this week, our Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Erin.
Lee Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel office coming to us from on location in one of the greatest cities in the world of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello, Maya.
Hey, Erin. Go Brew Crew. Beat the Phillies last night.
That's right.
I believe it's pronounced Milwaukee. I think it's Algonquin.
For the good land. That's a good history lesson. Thank you, Mr. Alice Cooper. Gazette columnist Althea Coleman is with us. Hello, Althea.
Hello. Big Cyhawk game tomorrow, but I'm not going to trash talk because it's bad luck if I do. Beforehand.
Right. No promises about once the clock hits all zeros, right?
Well, depending on who's the victor.
Right, exactly. And if we couldn't get Althea and Todd to disagree on more, from the other side of the Cyhawk rivalry is our Gazette columnist Todd Dorman.
Is there a game tomorrow? Saturday? I hadn't heard about it. I know we start Big Ten play soon, but yeah. Anyway.
All right. Let's get straight into this. So much to unpack here. And I know our sort of standard operating procedure is to start with our reporters to kind of give an in-depth description of the story, and then we turn to our columnists for their sort of perspectives and analysis opinions. But I want to flip the script on this one and get right to Todd and Althea, our two Gazette columnists. This is such and not an unexpected story, but a big one nonetheless. Althea, we'll start with you. Give us your sort of top line reaction to Joni Ernst's announcement that she will not seek re-election next year and what that ultimately means for Iowa's 2026 midterms.
Well, I would like to say it came as a huge shock. But the thing is, when there's speculation upon speculation upon speculation, especially in the media and outside of the media, it's kind of hard to say that it was a surprise. I think Republicans weren't necessarily waiting for it, and they definitely weren't cheering the announcement on. But now that what's done is done, they're looking forward to, they're looking ahead to, what's next. And the two questions become: who is going to likely succeed Senator Ernst, or at the very least, who is going to run in her place for the Republican Party? Senator Ernst already had a primary challenge in former state Senator Jim Carlin. That challenge was not likely to be successful. Carlin has not dropped out of the race. He is still in, and within not too much time after Senator Ernst made her announcement that she will not be seeking re-election in 2026, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, who represents Iowa's 2nd District, the 22 counties in Northeast Iowa, announced that she will be stepping forward to run for the nomination and the seat itself in 2026. So that being said, if Democrats are looking at Senator Ernst's announcement as some huge victory, they might be enjoying that victory for all of about 30 seconds, because Republicans, the ones to whom I've spoken, and I am a Republican myself, I have not met a Republican yet who isn't anything short of very, very pleased to hear that Congresswoman Hinson is stepping forward to run for the Senate seat. She will be an extremely formidable opponent for Democrats, and I would argue more formidable than Senator Ernst. What got lost, I think, in a lot of the shuffle here is because there was controversy with, I'll call them remarks, that Senator Ernst made at a late May town hall meeting. Somebody from the audience had yelled, people are dying. And her, flippant response was, we're all going to die. I think a lot of people saw that as kind of the death knell for her career. I can't agree with that. And granted, that's because I don't have the frame of mind of a politician, but I know that if I were up there and I saw, the jeers and the boos from a crowd who wasn't looking to act constructive, but really just be kind of a pain in the you-know-what, I'd have probably said something worse than we're all going to die. So I had a hard time faulting her for that. And I don't think that was really kind of the death blow. I think she has been thinking about this for a very long time. If anything, that was a sign that Senator Ernst is probably ready to move on. And that's the read I get, that ultimately her decision came down to the fact that Senator Ernst is ready to move on with her life. Being a senator is an extremely prestigious job. There's a great deal of power in there. It's no coincidence that people spend gazillions of dollars trying to, earn the right from a state to be the one, or one of the two, I should say, to represent that state in Washington. But that doesn't mean that it is all sunshine and rainbows. There is a lot involved in actually doing the job, not just running for the job, but doing the job, that is very, very difficult. And Senator Ernst is definitely at a different place in her life than she was when she ran in 2014, and even when she ran for her first reelection in 2020, which we now know will be the only time she's ever run for reelection. In 2014, she was married, she had a daughter in high school, and she was living in Southwest Iowa, serving as a first-term Iowa state senator. By 2020, she had gone through a very painful divorce. Parts of her personal life became front page news when we learned that her marriage was absolutely not a happy one. And, even though she arguably looked the more righteous of the two parties in that divorce, to have your personal life ripped apart like that, especially given the actual circumstances of the divorce, that is something that is extremely, extremely difficult to go through, even when, comparatively speaking, you've been through a combat tour in Iraq and all of the other things that public-facing politician has to face. But now it's 2025, leading up to the 2026 election. She's got aging parents, and now she has a daughter who is married and is a mother herself. And this isn't the first announcement we've seen this year from a prominent Iowa politician who understands that there is something to life after the role of service. And if she's ready to move on from that, good for her. So the next question becomes who's going to succeed her. And, we've talked about Ashley Hinson, the first question. But then we get to who is going to succeed Congresswoman Hinson in the race for Iowa's 2nd district. So we're going to be talking more about that in this podcast. But, the conversations that I've had with friends who are close to the Ernst campaign, close to the Hinson campaign, all of them are extremely supportive, not only of Senator Ernst and her decision to step away, but also of Congresswoman Hinson and her decision to step forward and run. So right now, the more interesting of the questions for me is who will be the one to succeed Congresswoman Hinson as the Republican candidate for Iowa's 2nd district.
Yeah, and I've heard that, Althea, what you said right off the top, that you can make the argument that Ashley Hinson comes into this thing as actually a better candidate for the Senate than Joni Ernst might have been. I've heard that from other people too. So that's an interesting dynamic here, that you quote unquote lose the incumbent, but as you pointed out, the people within the party aren't sweating it as much as you might have otherwise. Todd, what's your big picture view of this? What does Ernst's exit mean for 2026 in Iowa?
Well, the experts I've talked to have said that it means the seat is open, and I don't pay those experts, luckily, but that's what they've told me. Second,
Right.
I was very disappointed to find out that we're still all going to die, even though she's not running. I was hoping that maybe that meant that we weren't, but no, mortality is not one of the side benefits of this. Incumbency is powerful, and I think, and I'm not sure that Republicans are in trouble or anything with this seat, but it is nice to have the incumbent. I think Ashley Hinson is a formidable candidate, although outside of the 2nd district, she's going to have to introduce herself to a lot of Iowans that may not know who she is, who didn't watch the KCRG morning show back in the day. I think you would rather have an incumbent seek that seat than a new face. I think Hinson is going to be a strong candidate. All of this really, we don't know what is going to happen with this, mainly because all of it depends on what's the political atmosphere going to be next year. What's the landscape going to look like? What are some other cliches that I could throw in there right now? But
Where the political wind's going to be blowing.
I don't know which lane Ashley Hinson will be in, but I can tell you it will be a lane. So if we're headed for if we're headed for a midterm election that's going to be a difficult one for Republicans, then of course Democrats have a better chance. I think they're going to have a strong nominee. They've got several candidates that are vying for that nomination. Josh Turek is running. I talked to him this week, and he basically said that Ashley Hinson is just like Joni Ernst without the gaff, and that's probably true to some extent as far as voting record is concerned. So if Iowans are not happy with the way things are going and not happy with Republican leadership, then that's when Democrats are going to have a chance. If they are, then it's going to be less of an impact. But we'll have to see that unfold. But for now, I think it's an interesting thing. I haven't looked up to see when this happened last. I'm sure it probably has, but I'm not. Do you know? Have you
The
heard
last time the last time
that both offices, the governor and Senate, were open?
1968,
Okay.
when Democratic Governor Hughes resigned to run for an open Senate seat race, making both of them open Senate. Or open seat. Yeah. So 58 years. Been a while.
Yeah. So it's unusual, and it's a big transition, big change in what we're used to. The politicians that we've kind of, I haven't grown up with them, but I'm never going to grow up. But they've, the people that we've watched lead the state for the last, more than a decade, moving on. So that's, and then you've got the, would it be dominoes, deck
Right.
chairs, musical chairs, maybe. Who's going to get caught without a chair? So that's an interesting thing to watch. Turek said that Iowa was going to be the center of the political universe. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but it is going to be interesting if, as I say, the midterms look more competitive for Democrats. This could, with a Senate seat and a gubernatorial election on the ballot, we're going to have a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about outside money, especially, and bang for your buck, to your point, Todd, if you think that both of these races are competitive, then you have an opportunity to come in here and spend and try to influence two statewide open seat races. I don't know. I agree. It'll be interesting.
It's going to be really nice for local television, because they're going to get lots of ad sales, I think. Although I know that that's not the cool new way that you tout candidates, but I have a feeling they're not going to be able to resist filling our airwaves full
They'll
of
still be on TV. Absolutely.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And they'll be on during NFL games and college football games,
Yep.
and so there's just no way to avoid it.
I'm glad you point out that distinction too, Todd, because if I try every time I remind somebody who will say like, "Oh, you gotta love the elections, all the money that it means for you." It's like, the TV stations maybe. I don't see a whole lot of Ron DeSantis ads in the Cedar Rapids Gazette. So
we kind of get left out on that.
All right, let's get down to the gumshoe level here now. Maya, you're going to be reporting on these various campaigns over the next year. Plus, what stands out to you is on this reshuffled deck as you look forward to your job over the next little bit?
Yeah, even just kind of reporting out the story you and I, Erin, have been working on, just about a debrief of this shuffle in the U.S. Senate race. I'm just really curious to see what Democrats are going to do in the lead up to the election. There's kind of two sides of the same coin. On one side, Democrats are coming off of the high of winning the special election in Iowa Senate District 1 and, outperforming in the other special elections we've had. There's no incumbents running for governor or Senate, which incumbents running have a ton of power, so they could see that as a positive. And then, they're the party that isn't in power in the Oval Office coming into the midterms, which is always an advantage. But kind of going back to those special elections, even national Democrats are touting that victory as kind of a sign that maybe Democrats, there might be a big blue wave, or they might be able to outperform Republicans. But again, you have to be very careful with special elections because each one is a very specific environment and,
Low turnout.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So again, they have that, but you got to be a little bit wary of that. But on the other side, even though Ernst isn't running again, you do kind of have a candidate now that doesn't have that recent baggage of saying, well, we're all going to die. Some folks I've talked to mentioned that they see Hinson's framing of the One Big Beautiful Bill as different than Ernst was able to do, and of course, it was harder for Ernst to escape some framing that she did after those comments, and I feel like that she was more closely tethered to those comments, but Hinson, following along with what the NRCC has advised a lot of members of the House of Representatives to do is hold these roundtables, these events, emphasizing the positive impacts of the One Big Beautiful Bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, stuff like that. So some folks have said she may be able to frame that a little bit better. I mean, with Ernst's comments, she put that on a silver platter for Democrats to put in campaign ads. Many of them already did that. And so now they don't have that exact same, even though they voted the same way, just the public presence that they've been able to message around that bill is different. And I'm curious about how Democrats are going to kind of switch that framing on Hinson because it's just not the same as it was with Ernst. Another thing is a really big thing is voter registration for Democrats. The gap has just been widening and widening between their numbers and Republican numbers in the state. We've probably talked about this before, but I just took a quick glance at registration, and Republicans outnumber Democrats, active registered Republicans outnumber active registered Democrats by about 194,000. That's a pretty big gap, especially considering that in the last midterm election, it was definitely lower than 100,000. So those are just some interesting things I'm seeing. I'm just really curious about how Democrats are going to navigate forward with all these kind of different moving pieces and how they're going to run with these new candidates coming in.
All right, Tom, you'll be neck deep in this stuff for the next 14 months as well. Sorry to remind you of that. Uh, what strikes you about these new look 2026 Iowa elections?
Well, Maya pretty much covered it. She took a lot of what I was going to say. It will be interesting to see how these Democratic candidates who are running for the U.S. Senate seat, how Nathan Sage, Josh Turek, Zach Walls, Jackie Norris, how they reposition themselves, how they re-strategize, because all of their attacks and all of their talking points, right, were centered on Joni Ernst and some of her vulnerabilities, which we've talked about and discussed. So it'll be interesting to see what strategies they come up with, right? What talking points, messaging they put out to voters, how they try and go after or attack Ashley Hinson and her voting record. It'll also, be interesting to see how Jim Carlin, frames things, how he looks at positioning himself in this reshaped GOP primary and who might else jump in, right? We've seen some reporting, I think, from NBC News that Matt Whitaker, the U.S. ambassador to NATO and former Iowa Hawkeye football player, might be considering or weighing potentially launching a bid for the GOP nomination for that U.S. Senate race. Obviously, he ran against Joni Ernst in the GOP primary back in 2014 and was unsuccessful. We'll see who else might get in the race. And then switching gears to look at the second congressional district, looking at the race for that U.S. House seat that Ashley Hinson currently occupies. It's expected to be a crowded GOP primary, again, with it being a open seat, open race. We heard this week, we've seen former Iowa Republican Congressman Rod Blum and State Representative Shannon Lundgren, both from Eastern Iowa, both from the Dubuque County area, hint at potentially launching a bid for that Northeast U.S. House seat, which would be really, really interesting, to have a Republican former Iowa congressman who's well known in the district, has the name recognition and has that congressional experience, has a conservative record there and a record of supporting Trump in Congress during Trump's first term, that will make for a interesting GOP primary battle, right? It's just interesting dynamics there, and something that we haven't seen in quite a while in Iowa politics and in a GOP primary for a congressional seat.
Yeah, and we got a new one just today, just Thursday, right, Tom, in that district, and a second or an official announcement, or is that pending yet? Am I breaking an embargo?
Not breaking an
Okay.
embargo. So Iowa Republican State Senator Charlie McClintock
Yeah.
of Alburnett did announce today at a luncheon of the Lynn Eagles. It's a Republican fundraising group. Announced or declared his candidacy for Iowa 2nd Congressional District. He also confirmed that to me on the phone. I spoke with him a little bit before
There you go.
this podcast, and he's expecting to announce or declare his candidacy on social media. I haven't seen that yet, though. He may have since we've been here recording this podcast. But yeah, someone that I wouldn't have had on my bingo card to jump into that race. As I mentioned, he's from Alburnett. He represents rural Lynn County and Benton County in the Iowa Senate. Recently retired from the Cedar Rapids Police Department after 31 years, 36 years total in public safety. He started as a police officer, I think, at age 19. He also retired from the Iowa Army National Guard after 21 years of service, and was first elected to the Iowa House, I believe, in 2020, then elected to the Senate in 2022, reelected this past November. And then, so his state Senate seat won't be up again until 2028. So should he be unsuccessful in the primary, he would return to his state Senate seat. And he said that, this is something that he had been considering for a while. He had been weighing running for Congress and was just waiting for the right opportunity. Didn't expect that this seat would open so soon. He wasn't going to run against a Republican incumbent. Certainly wasn't going to run against somebody like Ashley Hinson, where she, not to shift gears and run for the U.S. Senate seat. And so, again, he said, with it being an open race, with his recent retirement, just felt that this, in the fact that, his Senate seat's not up until state Senate seat's not up until 2028, felt that this was just the right time, the right opportunity to put his hat in the ring.
There you go. And we're hearing there'll be another one sometime early next week, possibly another announcement there. And that's beyond the two that Tom already mentioned that have said they're thinking about it in Shannon Lindgren and Rod Blum. So as Tom said, that we expect to be a crowded primary as well. I just want to say, I'll tell you my biggest take from this announcement is that Joni Ernst is it clearly, or someone on her team is an On Iowa Politics podcast listener. Because if you'll remember at the end of last week's episode, I said, I'm tired of the rumor mill taking me up and down. I just want to hear it straight from Joni Ernst. And boom, 3 days later, Joni Ernst make an announcement. I don't give me that correlation doesn't mean causation stuff. It's the evidence is clear. I'm convinced and cannot have my mind changed. Todd and Althea, let me throw this back to you. We've been talking about in little spurts here, the uniqueness of having an open Senate seat and an open governor's race at the top of the ticket in the same election and how unique that is. Does that mean anything like logistically to this election? Does it mean anything to the voters? Does it mean anything to the parties? Or is it just kind of one of those unique statistical things and means we'll have new faces next year? Or does that actually mean something in some meaningful way in regards to the election itself?
I think it's one of those sort of, I don't know if it's landmark is the right, who becomes senator and governor. If they're like most Iowa governors and senators, they're going to be in those positions for a long time. So yeah, it's pretty important considering that this may be the last time we get to, choose a non-incumbent in each of those seats.
Yeah.
And yeah, that makes it important.
I think it creates somewhat of an inflection point for Iowa voters, and now kind of here's their chance and their opportunity to weigh in on, the last, roughly decade of Republican control and how they've felt about the last, man, I can't do math. The last 4 years, right, of having an all Republican congressional delegation.
I think that's right. And
Right?
even
Was it
even
20
more of the trifecta.
Well,
What is
anyway.
it, 4 or 6? Whenever none beat Cindy Axne, however long ago that was.
Yeah, that was 2022, right?
That was 2022.
Okay, so 4 years. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so
By the way, fun little insight into watching journalists do math. You're welcome on Iowa Politics.
Even simple math, we're terrible. Words good, numbers bad. So anyway, I think it is somewhat of an inflection point for Iowa voters to weigh in on how they felt about Republican control in this state, for the last several years. And here is potentially their opportunity. Should they choose, should they want to shift gears, right? Is it time to change things up and to maybe have more of a bipartisan mix, right, in terms of representation in Iowa's congressional delegation, and how do they feel about the last several years of Governor Kim Reynolds' term and tenure leading the state?
Yeah. All right. That'll do it. Before we go, I want to let's circle back to the Cyhawk thing again as we go out here. And Tom, Althea, and Todd, give me your. I don't want a prediction. I don't want a score. I want to hear your confidence level in your team's chances of victory. So 0 to 100%. Where is your confidence meter? Tom, we'll start with you in the Cyclones going into Saturday.
100%.
Woo. Tom's needle spiking. Todd, where's yours with the Hawkeyes?
I think at this point Iowa State has a better team, so I would expect them to win that game.
Okay, so you got a sub 50 confidence.
I'm surprised it's only a 3.5 point line, actually, but yeah.
All right, Althea, how you feeling?
You all suck. I just got to tell you that, and I'm sorry. I know you were probably not expecting that answer, but here's the thing: I've been a Cyclone fan for. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm not 25 anymore. And in that time, I have learned that the only association, organization, institution on the face of the earth that is more capable of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory than Republicans are the Iowa State Cyclones. So I try to be humble, okay? I never, ever, ever assume victory.
Great stuff. The best producer in the world, Bailey Cichon, is a Hawkeye and also predicting Iowa State, adding to Althea's consternation. Althea, Maya, I won't leave you out, but I know you don't have a horse in this race like me either. So I'll ask you, what's your confidence level in the Brewers going back to the World Series for the first time since 1982?
Oh man, I don't want to jinx it. I can't be according to my brother, I'm the reason why the Packers didn't go to the Super Bowl in 2012. So I can't. I'm sorry. Erin.
Okay, no, that's all right. I appreciate not wanting to be jinxed.
I jinxed the Super Bowl in 2012.
You do all realize that the team has no idea that any of this is happening, and that it doesn't matter.
You can't prove that.
I hate
Todd.
to be the.
You can't.
I do the same thing. I'm as guilty as anyone. If I'm watching the Iowa game on one TV and they're doing well, I can't switch TVs. That's my one little thing.
All I will say to that, Todd, is that the Packers fans will know this, so I won't go into deep background. But preceding the Brandon Bostic botched onside kick fumble was my in-laws saying, "Oh my gosh, Erin, the Packers are going to the Super Bowl." So yes, they clearly can hear us, Todd, and yes, they clearly do. It's science.
I mean, you're throwing that out into the universe. So I suppose, wasn't it Oprah? Was it The Voice or whatever that they used to talk about? That
right. All right, we'll see who's back for next week's episode and who calls in sick after Saturday's game. So That'll do it for this week's episode of On Iowa Politics. Thanks for hanging around with us, gang. If you're not already, subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you can also smash the like button. You can find the podcast each and every week also on your preferred Gazette or Lee newspaper website. However you listen, we love having you along for the ride. Now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. Maya, can you do me a favor and tilt your head with each of the papers here since Jared isn't on? Thank you. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. Thanks, guys. For Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Althea Cole, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Cichon, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone, and be good.